You ever had one of those nights where you're just minding your own business, maybe watching some low-budget weather show at 3 a.m., and then, suddenly, your phone blows up like it's trying to warn you about the apocalypse? Yeah, that was me. Except my apocalypse came in the shape of 2 feet of snow, a power-hungry HOA president, and a tow truck with my name on it. Name's Trevor Kowalski. For the better part of a decade, I've been running Mountain Peak snow removal out here in Colorado Springs. What started as a side hustle with a beat-up Ford and a plow that looked like it had seen combat in World War II somehow grew into a proper company. 5 trucks, a dozen employees, a wife and 2 kids relying on me to keep the lights on, and contracts with about half the neighborhoods in El Paso County. I like the work. I like being the guy who dug people out from nature's tantrums. And yeah, the money wasn't bad when winter came calling. That night, the forecast said 18 to 24 inches by noon, winds so strong they could knock over your grandma. My crew and I were ready for the marathon. My pride and joy, a 2019 Ram 3500 with a plow worth more than some people's entire cars, sat packed with salt, supplies, the works. In this job, you learn real quick that the line between a smooth operation and a straight-up disaster is just a matter of prep and luck. I was out the door by 4, headlights barely cutting through the swirling whiteout. I started with my best-paying clients, the ones who wanted their driveways clear before they'd even had their coffee. That took me to Ridgemont Estates. Now, Ridgemont's one of those communities that tries very, very hard to look like it doesn't try hard at all. Nice houses, mountain views, young families, retirees living their Colorado dream. I've been working there for years. Never had a problem. The folks like that I showed up early, got the job done, didn't block their mailboxes, didn't leak oil on the pretty pavement. But, there's always that one person who makes it their life's mission to remind you you're not actually in charge. For Ridgemont, her name was Patricia Hendress. Picture your classic HOA president. Mid-50s, sharp blonde bob, Lexus SUV with HOA, queen plates, athleisure outfits that probably cost more than my truck's down payment. She had the energy of someone who wakes up every morning and chooses violence. If violence meant sending passive-aggressive letters about your trash cans. Usually I kept things polite. Smile, nod, keep moving. Patricia, in her kingdom, was just another obstacle like black ice or a blown transmission. Until that morning. By the time I pulled into Ridgemont, snow was already deep, 8 inches and climbing, sky that weird pre-dawn gray. Some folks were out, shoveling like their lives depended on it, but it was hopeless. I got into my rhythm, blade scraping, snow flying, classic rock on the radio, coffee that tasted vaguely of gasoline. And then, just as I finished Pinehurst Drive, I saw flashing lights behind me. Now, at first, I figured, okay, ambulance, maybe a cop. I pulled over to the right thing. Except the lights didn't pass. They just sat there. So I stepped out, boots crunching, breath already visible in the freezing air. And that's when I saw the tow truck. And behind the tow truck, there she was, Patricia, parked in her white Lexus, arms folded, face glowing with the sort of satisfaction you only get from knowing you're about to ruin someone's day. The tow truck guy, young, embarrassed, barely looked me in the eye. "I have orders to tow your vehicle," he muttered, holding up his paperwork like it was a shield. I thought he had to be kidding. "You're towing my plow? In the middle of a blizzard? I'm literally working." But he just shrugged. Orders were orders, apparently. So I looked over at Patricia. She rolled her window down slow, like she wanted me to feel every second of inconvenience. "Mr. Kowalski," she said, dragging out my name, "you're operating a commercial vehicle within Ridgemont Estates without authorization from the HOA. That's a violation." I tried to reason with her. I wasn't servicing the HOA, just individual homeowners who paid me directly. She didn't care. "Your truck is on HOA property," she said, all fake sympathy. "Therefore, you need HOA authorization. And since you don't have it," it was surreal. There was a blizzard. People needed their streets plowed. Patricia? She'd rather see her entire neighborhood buried than lose control. "Cooperate with the tow truck operator," she said, "or I'll have to call the police for trespassing." I wanted to say something clever, something that would make her rethink her entire existence, but I knew nothing would get through. So I grabbed my stuff from the cab, wallet, phone, folder of contracts, and watched as my livelihood, got hoisted up like a prize fish. The other residents? They watched too, huddled on their porches, confusion and frustration playing on their faces. My client, Bob, even trudged through the snow to check in. "Trevor, what the hell is happening?" I told him, "The HOA says I'm unauthorized." He looked ready to storm the board meeting right then and there. "This is typical Patricia nonsense," he grumbled. With my truck gone and the snow still coming down, I called a Uber. I guess miracles happen, because one brave soul in a battered Honda picked me up. On the ride home, I called Rachel, my wife. She listened, went quiet, then got mad. "That's illegal. You need to call a lawyer. This is harassment." And she was right. But first, I had to get my truck back. The tow company wanted $150 a day for storage, $350 for the tow, $75 admin fee, and they wouldn't release it without HOA sign-off. Rachel called it extortion. She wasn't wrong. I called Mike Brennan, my lawyer, semi-retired, cranky but brilliant. I explained the whole circus. Mike sighed. "Trevor, this is one of the dumber things I've heard an HOA do, and that's saying something. You're in the right. Let's make some noise." He drafted a letter demanding the HOA release my truck, pay the fees, and hinted at a lawsuit for damages and lost income. But Mike being Mike, he also suggested something else. You could bill them for the lost work. Colorado law's got some fun quirks about emergency services. If you're prevented from rendering a necessary service, you can charge reasonable fees. It was a wild idea, but honestly, at that point, I wanted to make a point. So I went back to Ridgemont, borrowed Rachel's SUV, camera in hand. The place looked post-apocalyptic. Streets buried, cars trapped, neighbors stranded. I documented everything: photos, videos, interviews with residents, timestamps. Everyone was livid. The HOA hadn't brought in a replacement service. Patricia and her board had vanished. I built a case, itemized every hour, every cost, every promise Patricia's crew had broken. By the next morning, Mike had the invoice ready. $48,600, broken down in soul-crushing detail. Emergency winter rates, lost income, legal fees, you name it. We sent it to the HOA, to Patricia's house, and, just for kicks, posted it on the community forum. And that's when things went nuclear. My phone started blowing up, calls from Patricia straight to voicemail. Then from another board member, Richard, who tried to play good cop. "There's been a misunderstanding, Mr. Kowalski," he started. I laid it out for him. "You tow my truck during a blizzard, you pay the price." Richard wanted to move forward if I just eat the impound fees. I laughed in his face. The HOA lawyered up, threatened restraining orders, accused me of harassment for sending an invoice. Mike just grinned. If they're scared, it means we've got them. We gave them 72 hours to pay up, or we'd take it to small claims court and beyond. And while they stalled, word spread. Local news, social media, memes of my invoice. Then, twist time, reporters dug up that Patricia's husband, Donald, owned a snow removal company. Turns out, Patricia hadn't just been drunk on power. She'd been trying to clear the field for her own family's business. Now everyone saw her move for what it was: straight-up corruption. Homeowners who'd suffered losses piled on. Pipes burst, cars stuck. One poor guy broke his hip trying to walk through waist-deep snow. Ridgemont Estates went from picturesque to disaster zone in a day. I got my truck back. Impound lot wanted nothing to do with this PR nightmare. Then marched into small claims court with binders of evidence, statements, invoices, photos. Judge Anderson, a tired man who looked allergic to nonsense, listened as the HOA's lawyer argued I was making it all up. Then I took the stand. I laid it all out: the contracts, the blizzard, the sabotage. I showed industry rates, documented every dollar. The judge ruled in my favor, maximum allowed by law. And just like that, justice landed, at least the first round. The civil suit took longer, but with the press and evidence on my side, the HOA caved. $27,000 settlement, reforms to their bylaws. And Patricia? She disappeared, resigned via email, tried to pretend none of it happened. But life's not a movie. Sometimes the bad guys get what's coming, and sometimes karma needs a little help. A detective reached out months later. They were investigating Patricia for embezzlement. Turns out she'd siphoned over $150,000 from the HOA over years, funneling money through shell companies and her husband's snow plow outfit. My case helped them connect the dots, showed her pattern of using her position for personal gain. Patricia and Donald were arrested, perp walk and all. News cameras caught her in handcuffs, crocodile tears for the judge. 6 years in prison for her, 3 for Donald. Full restitution ordered. Homeowners got some of their fees back. The HOA got new leadership, new rules, and, ironically, contracted my company for all snow removal. Sweet, poetic justice. You'd think that'd be the end, but what really stuck with me was the messages I started getting. Homeowners, contractors, random folks, all telling me their own horror stories about HOAs and power trips. I started helping folks stand up for themselves. Sometimes all it took was a little documentation and refusing to back down. One case, an old vet being fined for flying the flag, hit close to home. We made noise, brought in the media, and the HOA folded in a week. That felt good. Looking back, the real lesson wasn't about snow or invoices or even the money. It was about power and how it only bends when you push. Patricia thought she was untouchable, insulated by rules and bureaucracy, able to ruin a guy's business on a whim. But nobody's untouchable. Not HOA presidents, not board bullies, not anyone who abuses the power they're given. The system is slow. The fight is exhausting, but it can work if you're stubborn, if you document, if you get the right people in your corner. Now, every time I climb into that old Ram, engine grumbling, plow gleaming, I remember what it cost to stand up. The invoice is framed on my wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Sometimes the only thing standing between you and abuse is your own refusal to be steamrolled. Justice isn't perfect. Sometimes you have to drag it kicking and screaming into the light. But it's out there, waiting for someone stubborn enough to see the fight through. For me, it started with a blizzard and a tow truck. For you, maybe it's something else. And here's what I want to know. What would you have done? Have you ever taken on the petty tyrants in your life, stood your ground, pushed back when it would have been easier to fold? Was it worth it? Share your stories down below. Let's see where the real boundaries of power, justice, and right and wrong truly lie.